Good evening, everyone. Good evening to our people here in the studio, in Rooster & Co., and our viewers online. My name is Edla Kaumbi, and I'm the Executive Director of the NICG. Welcome to the 2026 Fireplace Conversations, our winter series, episode 1. We are so excited that you are here. We're excited about this conversation. Usually we talk about governance, and when we talk about governance, we talk about big corporates, we talk about board charters and terms of reference and so on. But tonight we want to talk about the small business, the person running the hair salon, the person, doing business on their phone. What does governance look like for them? And so this evening I'm joined by these three, almost said extinguished, the distinguished guests. And I'm very excited to talk to them in their respective fields. I'll introduce them to you. On my left here I have Mr. Etuna Hango, who's an associate principal at EOS Capital. EOS Capital is Namibia's leading private equity fund manager. He works across the full investment lifecycle, including deal origination, transaction execution, fundraising, portfolio, governance, and exits. His experience spans sectors such as agriculture, infrastructure, telecommunications, renewable energy, real estate, tourism, healthcare, student accommodation. He's played a key role in structuring and executing investments that support scalable businesses, strengthening local industries, and contribute to long-term economic development. Etuna, you've also served on boards of portfolio companies where you support strategy, governance, capital structuring, and operational growth. Welcome. Thank you that if you doing all of this, you made time for us. And then here we have Danny Meyer. He was educated in Zimbabwe. Did you meet Robert Mugabe? No? Okay.
Also, and I admitted to you.
Okay. So he was educated there and in South Africa, and he brings an entrepreneurial background and business experience across 4 Southern African countries. In 2006, you co-founded the SME Compete with Claudine Mouton. You support growth of Namibian micro, small, and medium enterprises, helping build sustainable businesses, create wealth, and generate employment. That's great. Thank you for your service. More than a decade ago, Danny has written weekly entrepreneurship column for the Namibian. Your articles on economics, on enterprise, development, and business issues are also regularly published in Namibia and beyond. Good work, sir. Then we have phenomenal Feni Nikevali. Feni is a transformational and strategic leader. Feni, this is a whole thesis, my friend. You are distinguished in executive leadership, and you founded, and you are the CEO of Phenomenal Leadership. You're a trusted leadership brand. You're dedicated to developing focused and empowered leaders who navigate leadership with purpose and impact. You're also the co-founder of Nauye Valley Business Consulting, a firm dedicated to providing advisory and business consulting solutions for organizations. Feni is a chartered accountant, a registered accountant, by profession. Your career spans accounting, auditing, governance, professional development, executive leadership. You're also the first previously disadvantaged CEO and female of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. And you, in recognition of impact and leadership contribution, you were honored with Leadership Excellence Award at the African Achievers Award in 2023. Clock it, people. In 2024, she was appointed to serve as the first ambassador of strategic impact for the University of Namibia Accounting Society, affirming your commitment to shaping the next generation of accounting professionals. You serve as lecturer at the Ethical Leadership at the African Leadership Institute at Ali. Okay, good work, girl. You equip current and emerging leaders. Yeah. We're almost done. Fini's done things. Okay, that's why we're reading all this stuff. All right. Yeah, and then Feni also contributes her expertise to several boards of directors and committees, including the Namibia Institute of Democracy. She also contributes to community development through service on various social committees, including schools and residential neighborhood committees. Outside of your professional commitment, Feni mentors emerging leaders and shares her insights as professional speakers. That is my distinguished panel, and I'm extinguished after reading all of that. So let's get on with it, everyone. I'm so excited. We're just going to get right into it. And I hope you will be taking notes, so we'll ask you some questions, and hopefully you have some answers for us too. So, Danny, I want to start with you first. Are you ready? So, yeah. Must know.
People, yeah.
Yes.
I feel like an innocent pawn.
This
in
is
a
why we're
deadly
starting with the
game-
innocent pawns.
In a deadly game of chess here tonight.
Danny, after 2 decades working directly with small business owners, does the word governance mean anything to them? Do you think they know anything about governance? Like, what does it mean, if anything?
They do, actually, and perhaps even more so than larger enterprises, actually, because they realize when you're in the kasi, when you're starting your little business, you're in a very competitive environment. You have very little leeway when it comes to collaborating with competitors and fixing prices and so on and so forth. You're on your own. From the time you wake up in the morning, the system is against you. So you better, from day one, put a solid foundation in place, or else you're not going to be around within weeks. So, yes, indeed. How can I make such a bold statement? Just seeing how they actually behave, what they do. They understand the importance of building trust, of doing the right thing all the time, or else you are going to get into trouble, because there'll be the city police watching you. There's going to be the other regulatory bodies, NAMPAL, everybody's going to be there, because they seem to have all the time in the world to sit and watch and target you.
Okay.
So indeed, yes. But we'll elaborate if you give me an opportunity later.
Sure. What do you guys want to add to that? Do you think small businesses understand governance? Do they think about governance? Would they call it governance?
So I do. Thank you very much for having me here. So I do agree with Danny, but to a certain extent. Maybe just to elaborate a bit further, for a small business owner, initially the first stage is really just to survive. And to create value and to bring your product out there and your services. Governance is not really the word that comes to their mind. Yes, they might just rephrase it in a different manner. So they know they need to do something right, but they will not necessarily call it governance. They'll probably call it, checks and balances. I need to have some controls in place. But governance comes a little bit further down the line as they become more established. And then they start putting a bit more checks because now the business is growing. So for me, I think it's more of a timing issue. They do understand it, but probably not at the initial original stage when they start setting themselves up.
Petuna, you're shaking your head. Yes, yes. Is there something you want to add?
Not much really, but I think my colleagues here have almost fully captured the real sentiment. I mean, an entrepreneur is often focused on what's going to keep them in business, and then secondarily, what's going to, grow their business. And I think through that, they realize governance, maybe not in that word that we use as professionals, but they realize that this sort of structure and control is important in ensuring that you survive and grow. You need to separate your finances, the business from the personal, and so forth. So I think the lessons almost teach themselves, but I wouldn't say, they look at King 4 and they're like, this is what I'm going to build my business on.
Right. Sure. Yeah, I think maybe on that then, maybe while you're on there, there's a popular view that small businesses fail because they don't have enough structure. They don't have proper records, no accountability, no separation between the owner's pocket, like you said, and the business account. Do you think that's a governance problem, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's a governance problem, definitely. Because, if you think about what governance is, it's really just the rules that define how you operate a business effectively. So if you don't keep proper records, if you're not filing with NAMRA, if you don't have your management accounts, if you don't, have employment contracts, all of that falls under the larger umbrella of governance. So it is poor governance if you aren't record keeping properly. So yeah, definitely, I would say yes.
But does it contribute to them failing, or you don't? Because it sounds like you're saying they survive. They're trying to survive with the first few months or whatever, or years, they're trying to survive, yet we're saying that the lack of governance is making. Maybe talk to that a little bit.
I certainly agree there. They're trying to survive, and yes, at times the reality is that there is no structure, because with a small business, whether it's a founder or whoever you are, you become the business. The business is the founder is the business. It's intertwined, and you will most likely lack structure. But I would say that that's probably not necessarily the root cause. The root cause goes deeper than that. The failure is actually a discipline issue. Most of the time, it's governance, but governance where the root cause is discipline and accountability. Because if you don't, the word governance means governing something. Yes. And sometimes you can't govern something you don't understand. So if you don't have discipline in terms of financial integrity, understanding how finance, having oversight, small little things like how do you account for your money? Do you know where your money is going? What is it being used for? What's draining you? That ultimately leads to your downfall if it's not managed carefully.
Okay. So, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think I just want to add to it. Maybe in the defense of entrepreneurs, I think if we're to list, the factors that lead to businesses closing, I think governance is probably very low on that list. Okay. I think the environment that you operate in, from a policy perspective, the macros, etc., those probably rank a bit higher. I don't think not having management accounts is what's going to close your business overnight.
Okay, we'll get to that. So I'm thinking, Daniel, I'll ask you this now. So when you're looking at a small business as a potential investment, what does governance actually mean in that moment? And I think, you can also answer this because you as Capital. Are you looking for structures and documents, or are you looking for something else? If you're a potential investor and you...
Okay, all of those, but I just quickly want to end on that other point by saying that we've got to separate entrepreneurs from self-employed people. And Namibia has many self-employed people. You just have to walk around any of the townships. You see a young man with layers of boiled eggs, a plastic bag with brochins, polonies, and so on. He's not an entrepreneur, he's self-employed. Some meme behind him is the entrepreneur. She gets up at 4 in the morning, stokes the fire, boils the eggs, and then 10 or 15 of these youngsters will come to her, draw stock, either on credit if she knows them and trusts them, or they pay. They walk around and so on. So they're self-employed. So we must be careful because we say business failure. We have many survival entrepreneurs because of the circumstances in the country. And as soon as they get a job, many of them will go. They're actually not entrepreneurs. And we must also understand that meme under the tree, selling fat cakes when you were a little girl at school. And when you go back there 20, 30 years later and she's with a grey hair, still selling pet books, she's not an entrepreneur. She's just generating a little bit of money there to put food on the table and so on. She's not growing her business. She's a survivalist. Or the lady who rents the chair, the hairdressing salon, and does yakis and bolas and fishtails 24/8.
It's like he hangs in narrow locations.
She's not an entrepreneur because she's going to continue renting the chair. She's never going to start her own salon and so on. So we just need to be careful. Okay, so why do I agree with you? It's because of lack of knowledge and then indiscipline. Okay, not understanding the importance of documents or not actually understanding the importance of separating your income from the business income. And the system, again, is against them. Social security, they get into trouble. They think it's important to register a CC. They're not told by BIPA that you have certain compliance requirements and so on. Social security, if you're employing somebody. So the whole system is against them. And so I think the failures in Namibia are really not as high as popularly say, 8 out of every 10 little businesses fail. That's not true. And I know what I talk about because I work at the front line and I see how they grow. But it is important that what you say we need to do right from the beginning, we need to help them put a bookkeeping system in place, record keeping. They haven't benefited like certain demographic in the country where the parents have been in business. talk about overdrafts today. It's Christmas, I'm going to buy more stock. I went to the bank, or I've got a tender, I'm going to get bridging. They don't understand. Their parents were workers, were domestic workers, laborers. So we tend to not address that bottom level, the informals, the really micros. So yeah, documentation, so that's what we do. And we work with about 2,000 of these little businesses across Namibia's 14 regions at any time. And I wish I could be working with 20,000 because I know there's a need.
So you were distinguishing between an entrepreneur and a self-employed person, but we're looking at if you are an investor. Maybe Etuna, you can lead us as well. What would you look at in terms of governance if you're looking to invest in a small organization?
Okay, so my venture capital side is rather small. Okay, we have 3 pillars. We have the Mother Teresa side, as I call it, helping.
What would you look at?
And we've got, I'm going to go to that in a moment. And the other pillar is property, taking old property, repurposing it, and venture capital. So when it comes to venture capital, right from the start, there has to be discipline. What do we look for? We take away the checkbook. Well, there's no longer a checkbook now, the proverbial checkbook. And we take away the HR function. So the money and the HR, and we provide those services for a small fee. So that so there's the venture capital and there's also service provision. And by taking care of the HR and the legal compliance side, we know that over time we can help them understand the importance of that. And we don't like to stay in an enterprise for more than 60 months. We reverse up. So when it comes to HR, it's very important, or else if you don't do that, they will employ their relatives. They won't have employment contracts in place. And so that's natural in a situation like Namibia where you have so many people unemployed. It's a sort of form of black tax as well. When it comes to the money matters, it's very important because it teaches them that's the business money, not yours. And then of course when it gets to the legal compliance side, there's a plethora of requirements that they have to tend to annually, papers they have to fill out, fees they have to pay, and so on. So that's but we're not in the same league as EOS. Huh? Those guys are into this a big way. We just work with very small enterprises.
Yeah, I like what you're doing though. Sounds amazing. Etuna, can you talk to, because we're talking governance, so yeah. What would be the interest of an investor in terms of governance, or what do they look at? Because
so I think, I can speak for myself as an investment professional. I'd say probably the most important thing is, are your numbers in order? Are your books in order? Do you have management accounts? Do you have your AFs in order? Are your VAT returns in order, and so forth? Because I think that is a reflection of a certain level of understanding, because a lot of entrepreneurs mistake cash from profit. And when you see financial statements, it gives you a clear indication on whether you're profitable or not. But it also just gives us comfort that we speak the same language. I think too is we need to make sure you're compliant with, all the regulatory authorities. Are your BIPA, are you in good standing with BIPA, Social Security Commission, NAMRA, etc.? Otherwise, we can't do business together. And then, I think just general things, having agreements in place with your employees, with your suppliers, with your financiers, etc. Those are, I would say, probably the core. Probably the layer above that, policies and so forth. We have a function internally as a firm that can put that in place for you and guide you as a business person or as a business to ensure that you have the right, documentation in place moving forward that can support, call it the attraction of institutional capital into perpetuity, whatever it may be. But that's what I would say it is, yeah.
So when I'm listening to you and thinking what you said earlier and what you're saying now, because those are governance things, right? And we're saying that it's not important, yet for somebody who would want somebody to invest in them, it sounds like they would need to have those things in place. Yes?
Yeah, so probably I should clear that up. I didn't say it's not important.
Mm-hmm.
I said that in terms of what leads to failure of
okay,
business
sure.
is probably low. In terms of, look, if you don't have your apps in order, you can still be a really good businessman and run a really good, successful business until, let's say, NAMRA comes and catches you, whatever it may be. And even then, you might be sitting on a hoard of cash and you can pay whatever penalties you need to pay
Sure.
at that point in time and then
100%.
continue to, operate.
Yeah.
So that's arguably, I think that's the point I was trying to make. Yeah.
No, and that's a good point. And it segues into the next question that I want to ask, because when we as the NICG talk about governance, we define it according to what, say, King would say. And it's not so much about the rules. It's about the outcomes of the things that you are doing, right? So, for example, King 4 would say it's about good performance, it's about ethical culture, it's legitimacy, which is public trust, and it is conformance and internal controls. So it's not about that you must have these things in place, but what are you doing to ensure that you have good performance and ethical culture and controls and legitimacy, right? So if somebody then just is a nice person who does well, would we say that they are governing well? Penny, maybe you can start there.
Yes, I just want to briefly touch on their points in terms of the management account. And I like the example that Danny made in terms of just the man on the street, the salon lady, the one selling kapana or bread. They will most likely not have management accounts. If an investor wants to invest in them, the chances of them having these fancy management accounts and a strategic plan, it won't happen, So you look a bit deeper in terms of also the softer side of governance, which will answer your question.
Exactly.
So in terms of the King 4, right? King 4 is a buzzword to many small business owners. It should be very important, but it is a buzzword. So in terms of performance and ethical cultures, you look at things like the personal values, for example. Right, King 4, fortunately, was very lenient towards small business owners as well. So they've got that apply and explain principle, where they also look at the size and complexity of a business. So you don't need to have, as a small business, a whole internal audit function. You don't need to have a social and ethics committee. But you still need to have some kind of performance in place.
Exactly.
Are you creating value in whichever way you can? For example, you don't have an ethics committee like a big business. But are you actually setting the tone at the top? Are you leading by example? Do you have integrity? Those would be some of the aspects. Control measures. Do you have these small little controls in place? So yes, you are a small business owner, but do you count your cash? Do you put it in a safe place? It's those aspects.
But is that not governance then?
That is governance.
Yeah.
But just based on the size and complexity, you sort of tailor make it for the small business.
Which is what it's supposed to do, right? So if you don't then look after your cash, and if you are not an integrous person, those things don't cause businesses to fail, no?
Yeah, well, I would say they do, but again, I would say there are a lot more challenges you face as an entrepreneur.
Mention those again, and let's see how they fit in with the outcomes.
I mean, one, having to wait for BIPA to register your business for however long it's going to take them. Two, you make 100...
That would cause your business to fail?
Yeah, it could. I'll give you an example, right? You have a good business. You're operating as a sole proprietor, perhaps. You might not have a business registered, but you're an operator. There's an opportunity that comes. You need to formally register a business to access that opportunity and then get the economic benefits from that opportunity. You need to submit in a week. BIPA takes 2 weeks. Done. Yeah. Right? And there are many examples that we see, on the ground. So again, I think there are a lot more. There are many other challenges that entrepreneurs face, even just to get started. I mean, financing, for example, where you're going to get the money to start or to expand your business before you even start thinking of controls and processes and so forth. So there are many, many others that I think probably rank above it. But yeah, I think that's that. And then just I want to probably echo what you were saying in terms of proportionalizing your governance level to the size of your enterprise. And my advice to entrepreneurs would be, there are different buckets of governance. They are the non-negotiables. You must be in good standing with Namra. You must be in good standing with BIPA. You must be in good standing with this and that and that. And then they're I'll call them the nice to haves. And as an entrepreneur, you need to ask yourself, does this add more value than it cost me in time and process, right, in bureaucracy and whatever it may be? And as you scale your business, it starts making sense to add, various layers of governance and bureaucracy, because now it's not just you, it's 10 people, it's 100 people, it's 1,000 people. And now you need to standardize certain processes throughout that firm such that you can continue operating successfully. So I think that's probably the main message.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Sounds good. Okay. So I want to talk to you, Danny. I think with what he said, I think he actually, you started actually talking about that in terms of where do you, when should you start first looking at that in terms of governance, and especially with the kind of businesses that you deal with, how would you advise them if you were to say practically in terms of when governance actually starts?
So the first thing you do say, start writing things down. You give them a book, you help them, you say, this is where you put all your income. This is where you put all your expenses, your taxi, your charge cards, your whatever. And once they get into that, you can start moving to the next stage. And later on, if they actually become computer literate and even have the hardware, you can start introducing Excel to them, so on and so forth. But, it's entrepreneurship is a journey, and small steps, especially amongst historically disadvantaged Namibians. They haven't had the benefit, as I said earlier, of people they can turn to, and so on, all grew up in that environment, business environment. Very few, actually. There's the Namunjebus and, those iconic black businesses, Akapandis and so on. Their children will have benefited from that. But, quite frankly, those are few and far between. So you started by writing, taking that money to the bank. Don't put that money here, Meme. Take it to the bank. And then she'll say, but the bank charged me a cash deposit fee. We say, no, you should ask them to open a basic business account. Bank of Namibia put that in place years ago to get rid of this, to keep transactions low, transactional costs down, no cash deposit fee, and so on. The banks don't actually market that service. And so I tell them, go to the bank and tell the bank you want to open a BBA. And if they say no, you call me from your cell phone. If you have, even if it's a Tamagotchi, you call me and I'll talk to that bank. And get in the vehicle if I'm close by and go and talk to them. So it's really a journey, and you've got to do a lot of hand holding from the beginning. And people rush into registering CCs and so on. So with all fairness to BIPA, I mean, the process has improved vastly. With most of those, the problem still lies in the municipalities and the so-called fitness certificate, the bylaws. That's where the problem lies, actually. Those have to be sorted out. But generally, people are honest. They want to comply. They don't want to be on the wrong side of the law. So I guess it positions them well, and your organization, the Namibia Institute of Corporate Governance, you're going to grow big in years to come, because imagine all those small businesses are going to grow and have to go into King 4 and blah, 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 whatever it is.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dennis. You want to add to that? I think I really want to keep it to, I want to draw that parallel or alignment with. We don't want people to think that governance are just rules and checklists and things. We're looking at the outcomes. And so even if you're writing things down, because we want to look at what does prudent control or effective control look like? What does good performance look like? How do we define this? And how would you advise a small organization in terms of what, and even what legitimacy means? And especially, Fanny, you were in corporate and you started your own business. How many of those principles, translated into you as an entrepreneur or small business owner?
Well, I must admit, if you move from corporate to entrepreneurship, it is a bit of a psychological shock, because things are different. If you're part of corporate, you're part of the bigger picture. You're part of all these fancy items like, there's a risk register. You don't really have to think about risk, how it affects you individually. But once you move into entrepreneurship, you're literally putting yourself in that picture. And you always have to be honest with yourself that, yes, you are now feeding for yourself. You are taking care of yourself as an entrepreneur. So these things are very important. But like Danny rightfully said, record keeping. No matter whether it's corporate or entrepreneurship, record keeping is very, very important. One of the things that we do very well in corporates is we look at budgets, we assess budgets, we monitor budgets. Same has to be entrepreneurship. I would not take that away. That financial oversight, maybe just to a lesser extent, but it should remain. It should remain. But there are certain things that are corporate governance, I would like to call it corporate governance, that will not necessarily maybe really be useful or beneficial to a small business owner or an entrepreneur. All these approval levels all over the place. You know, you have to move with speed, agility, etc. It's still governance, but just to a lesser extent.
And we agree with that. Please go ahead, add.
Yeah. No, I mean, I probably just want to paint a picture, right?
Yes,
if
yes.
you rewind back to when business started and whatnot, and the origins of corporate governance, you'll realize that corporate governance was actually not introduced by entrepreneurs. It was actually introduced by financiers, so that when they make investments into people's businesses, there is some sort of rule book that ensures a certain level of accountability. And I think corporate governance is effectively the middle ground between entrepreneurs who are operators. It's people who get stuff done, idea, they see an opportunity and they execute, versus the people who have the resources to empower and effectively unlock that value that the entrepreneur sees. So when you understand that, you start to realize that, I mean, from an investor's perspective, and as call it the custodians of corporate governance, right? Without investment capital, there probably is no corporate governance. You start to realize that you need to apply rules in proportion to what is necessary for that level of business to enable that entrepreneur to grow. If you look at, let's say, the American economy and Silicon Valley, why that's so successful, founders are backed, right? And a VC will go to a founder and say, how much do you need? 10 million, whatever, cool. We don't really care about, how you get it done. We see the plan, we like your profile, your personality, your behavior, etc. You tick these boxes as an entrepreneur, and we believe we're going to succeed. Here's the checkbook. Go and succeed. We're not going to ask you, every week, write us a report. What did you do with the cash, etc., etc. And that's why that economy is so successful in building businesses, right? So we need to understand, and I'll say it again and again and again and again, that we need to apply corporate governance in proportion to where the business is and what the business needs.
100%. Yes, I agree with that.
You need to talk to Development Bank of Namibia.
I think, yeah. I want maybe let's talk about risk governance, for example, right? Which is a corporate governance aspect and an enabling factor. Are we saying that small businesses don't manage risk or don't look at risk because they? Yes, no. Because I feel like we are divorcing the thing. Because you're saying that yes to scale it down, but then it sounds like, I don't know. It sounds as if we're saying, but not really, or as if the Silicon Valley person do whatever you want, and then they don't apply principles of corporate governance. I mean, they're not calling it corporate governance. They're not looking at King 4, but surely they're doing some sort of risk management. They're doing stakeholder engagement. We are having some sort of segregation of duties, which are all...
No, and I would argue, in fact, they're probably the best risk managers, right? Because they are the risk takers, if you think about it. Not taking a job, starting a business, going out there looking for funding, looking for clients or customers, whatever that may be. That is risk management. I mean, you're taking risk and you need to manage that risk quite effectively. If your client yells at you, you don't yell back. That's risk management. Because if no, but stakeholder management, but you're managing the risk because if you blow your gasket, then you lose the business effectively. So entrepreneurs are actually very good at instinctively managing risk. It's just that I think as professionals, we try to box it and understand it. And that's, the bridge that corporate governance is effectively. Say that how do we, document this so that everyone understands it and can be held accountable to it. Yeah, but yeah.
Yes, and I absolutely, because it's the documentation part at times. So they all manage risks in their own ways, but it's sort of like you are managing it as you go along on a daily basis. Have your employees been paid? If I don't pay my employees on time, they will leave me, then my business fails. How do I make sure that I don't get a penalty from BPA? That's a risk. You're thinking it. But at times, the challenge is just documenting it. You don't have that risk register where you say low, medium, high risk. a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't have the luxury, they don't have the time to have that, but they're managing it just on a daily, day-to-day. Sometimes it's in the mind, it just doesn't come through. But we can't say they don't manage risk.
Yeah, but which is exactly that, right? They are doing governance. Because good governance is not the fact that you're documenting it, it's the fact that you're having the outcome. Because you're doing those things, you're having this outcome. But let's talk to the room here. What do you think?
Can I just say, entrepreneurs understand it's important to take risks, but not to be reckless. And they do understand that. And they must manage their risk for the reasons that the two other panelists said. Because if you don't, you're going to be out of business. If you don't pack your things away nicely at night, cover your tools, your sewing machine, clean and dusted, it's not going to work tomorrow, and you're not going to be able to make that meme dress or that school uniform or whatever.
Edla,
Yeah.
may I just add, sorry, very
Go ahead.
shortly. And if you think about it, really, what corporate governance is just the documentation of what the founder does, right?
I don't agree with that.
Because if you think about it, when a business grows to a certain extent, so when you start your business, you're effectively very small and you have a lot of control over a lot of things, right, across the value chain, marketing, finance, operations, etc., business development, you name it. And as that grows, you have to start outsourcing a lot of those functions to people. But you did those things in a certain way, right, that led to the growth of that business. And if you probably think about the first policy that was ever drafted at corporate level, it was a guy saying, how do I do this and how do I write it down so that the guy I employ to do this function for me can do it the way I did it, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, but that's not what makes it corporate governance. What makes it, corporate governance, according to King, is leading ethically and effectively so that you have. So it doesn't say it's when you document or when you put it. That's a way to do a certain thing. So, and we said earlier that when we scale it down, when we make it fit for purpose, then we do it. So maybe fit for purpose for these two people doesn't mean they need to have a risk register, but we're still leading ethically and effectively, hopefully, to have the outcomes of good, performance and so on. And so I don't want us to go away here and think that if I don't document it, or the fact that I'm documenting is what makes it good governance. But I want to talk to the room. I don't know if there are questions or thoughts or comments. And I also want to ask you, as you maybe want to say something, is over-governance detrimental? Is there such a thing as over-governance or under-governance? What are your thoughts? And do we have questions online, team? No. They'll have their own microphones, I think. Do we have microphones for the audience? Do we have questions and comments? Yes? Okay. Next to you.
Got a pleasure as well to really give my input to this robust and quite comprehensive discussion around corporate governance, more especially.
Maybe take one of ours.
Especially in the small business scale as well as the side hustle. But of course, is there such a thing as over governance or under? Of course, agreeably, what we define, that's what becomes the thing. So it depends. And again, what's the picture that we want to draw as corporate governance leaders? I think there's a term that we often speak about, but at times we forget about it, and that's stewardship. The element of stewardship, that's, again, upscale of corporate governance. How do you manage your time? How are you managing your resources as a side hustle? How are you managing, such that you achieve, as what's being alluded to, your objectives. You're raising your cash, your money is coming in. If it's not coming in, what is it that you're doing wrong? Of course, it comes back to that question. But in the end, of course, stewardship has long been there, of course, going back into history. Going back home, how we're taking care of the goats, the cattle, and all these things. So it's there. Perhaps it's in what format, what's the language when we are at scale, or in what space are we? But of course, it's really good conversation. Of course, quite a fair representation from the side hustles on the panel and into, small as well as medium, and those that are also self-starting, we really see the contribution. And if you really look at the statistics, to make it short, through the Namibia Statistics Agency, the informal sector, it's really contributing quite much to the GDP. And this is really the heart of the economy. And we really have to bring them on board that this is there. We can do better as a nation. And let's talk. We can scale it down, even to stewardship. Again, it comes back to the same what we want to achieve. Ethical leadership, wherever you are as an individual person, small business, side hustles. Let's be ethical. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your contribution. And I would be remiss if I don't thank 91, because they are making all of this possible. So thank you so much, 91, for your sponsorship and allowing us to be able to have this series of Fireplace Conversations. Do we have other comments or questions? No?
There's somebody.
Oh, yes.
Behind.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think I just wanted to add to the gentleman's point of how he narrated everything. And I remember one of the panelists mentioning that sort of before governance, there should be discipline. And he spoke about how you manage your time, how you manage your resources. So no matter the level of enterprise you are in, you need to have that discipline. And of course, like one of our panelists also mentioned, that the governance comes in at whatever level of the enterprise you are at. So it might not necessarily look the same in terms of a small business or a small enterprise compared to a corporate one, but there will be some sort of governance. And I want to just a caveat here that governance is such a proverbial word that I didn't even sort of know exactly what it means until I came today and I, got to understand what it really means. So this is such a robust and an insightful discussion, and I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Any other thoughts? Do we have any questions from our online viewers or any comments? No? Nothing. All right.
Etla,
Yes, go ahead, Finny.
I really want to touch on the comment that was made by the gentleman about the side hustles. Side hustle is a side hustle. It's basically you work from 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 and you're doing something on the side. Whether it's after hours, maybe you have a passion for baking, so you decide I'm going to now bake my cookies after hours and so forth. So that person necessarily might not even consider themselves to be an entrepreneur. They're just doing something as a side hustle and making money from it. So if I were an investor and I want to invest in a side hustle, I really would look at the owner. I would look deeply, because that's where you get the ultimate governance values. Because that owner has a day-to-day job and etc. But you look at that integrity. Does this owner have values? Because the values of an owner
culture?
are actually the values of a business, will be the values of that side hustle. So that's where the ethical leadership comes into play very importantly.
And I think that's what's important. Give me a second, Danny. Like, that's what's important. And that's what I want to bring home, right? That when I'm saying I'm looking at this small business owner, what am I looking at exactly? Because you talked about now their values and their integrity, which is ethical culture. But also, if I'm baking cakes, I want to make sure that, my money is looked after, or, that the ingredients that I'm costing and buying at the right, that's like, prudent control. I'm trying to see, that I buy at the cheapest place, and all of that is managing. So those things are components of what good governance looks like, right? And so what me writing down or having a risk register or having management account is not what makes it governance.
Yeah. Look, a side hustle is usually to supplement your income. Okay, or you're living above your means, or like many Namibians, you're spending too much time on online gambling, for example. So, and the statistics are there to reveal what I'm saying, the accuracy of what I'm saying. So the side hustler, it could actually be working against governance, in the sense that their employment contract, their relationship with the employer might say that you're working for us. And so the mechanic who works on somebody else's car over the weekend and so on. So that's why side hustles, we're always I know that the journey of entrepreneur often starts, but side hustles are fraught with problems, and I've seen a lot of, will I say, illegality taking place there. Because often then you find that if you are working for an employer, say light engineering welding, and you're doing welding on the side as a side hustle on weekends, doing burglar bars in the neighborhood and so on, inevitably you start taking welding rods from your employer, stick them down your overall, and so on and so forth. So we tend to stay away from side hustles. You're either in business or you're out.
And that's not ethical culture. That's a bad outcome when you.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe let's narrow down. Let's then say what will we advise small businesses? Because I'd like to think that we agree that these outcomes are good outcomes for any organization, right? But we also agree that we're not trying to bog them down with having all these papers and things, which hopefully it's clear that that's not what makes it governance, right? So what can we say in terms of having these good outcomes, which are good? Which, if I'm looking at a business that I would want to invest in, I would want to see. What would you then advise? Let's start with you, Atuna.
I think the most important thing is probably to separate the business's money versus your money, because I think that's what's going to make it clear to you whether you're making profit or not. If you can separate those two accounts, your personal account versus the business account, and you run the business expense through the business account and your personal expenses through your own account, you'll very clearly see, whether you're making money or not. It will be as clear as day. And then I think my co-panelists and even the audience mentioned it, is you need to be disciplined. You need to know what it is you're trying to achieve. You need to understand sacrifice. If you call it delay of instant gratification for, future success or whatever it may be. And I think those two principles will probably take you far.
Yeah. So maybe let me also dictate to you in terms of how to. So let's put them in columns, right? We're thinking good performance, right? And value generation. We're thinking ethical culture. We're thinking effective controls. We're thinking legitimacy. So how can small businesses have these 4 outcomes in their salon and welding business?
Okay, so you first.
Yes, Fanny, go ahead.
I think there's so many opportunities out there. I think one of them that you could have missed is also the stakeholder, just making sure that you're out there and you're exposing
legitimacy.
The stakeholder legitimacy. That is also a very important part of it, because that is ultimately, once you get that right, you are able to fill all the other columns as well, instead of value creation and so forth. You can't do it alone as an entrepreneur or a business owner. You might start off alone, but eventually you will need all of that.
So how do you do legitimacy? How do you get legitimacy as a small business owner?
I would say
in the stakeholder, and what does the stakeholder look like?
I would say legitimacy comes through compliance. You need to comply with, first of all, any stakeholder relationships, any stakeholder needs, compliance with BIPA, NEMRA, all of that stuff. So that is where you become a credible and legitimate business owner. And then if I were to give them advice, I would say rather over governance than under governance. I think under governance, yes, it might seem the easy way out. Let's not have some of the processes, but it is very risky. And it normally can lead to some fraud eventually if you really focus on under governing yourself. Mm-hmm. If anything, it might be a bit more costly, it might be a bit more heavy or more bureaucratic or whatever you want to call it, but I would rather say, rather do a bit of over governance and under governance.
Mm. And I want us to use the actual work or tasks or processes that we are referring to when we're saying this, right? So we're saying governance, because we're talking small businesses. We agreed that we're not trying to have them have a risk register. So when we are saying controls, what are we talking about? When we are saying legitimacy, because legitimacy has to do with people trusting your business and thinking that, you are a solid person, you are not shady, right? So what are those things that we need to do? Because we are not doing a hulking manual, but what does legitimacy look like? What are at least some controls that they need to have?
So I say apply the 4-way test. And this is what has guided me from the day I ventured into business on the 2nd of August 1982, when you were still a twinkle in your mother's eye.
Oh, no, not me.
Okay.
I'm a whole auntie. But yeah, maybe this audience.
So the four-way test. Okay, these are the things you ask yourself, your thoughts, your words, your deeds, your actions. Is it the truth? What you're telling that person, the supplier, the customer, the investor, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Fair to you, to them, to the customer.
Microphone.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Goodwill, will people come back to you, do business with you? Will your employees come to work with a spring in their step, your suppliers and so on? Okay? And then lastly, on the four-way test, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Okay? Sorry, did I? Okay, the third one.
Oh, no, it's
is it the
beneficial and
truth?
fair, yeah,
Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Is it beneficial to all concerned?
How do I determine
That's the
who's
four-way
concerned?
test of Rotary. Rotary started about 120 years ago. It was networking, business networking. 4 young men then decided they were new in the city, no business, they were being crowded out. They got together and they met weekly and they rotated the meetings, the different business premises. One was a lawyer, the one was a coal merchant, and one was a butcher, and the one was, I think, a barber. And that's where the word Rotary comes from. And it's all over the world. There are 8 clubs in Namibia, and we live by this credo, and we use it. I use it in my business, and I know that most of my fellow Rotarians, as we call ourselves, do that as well. And I'm proud to give you one of
Thank you.
those.
No, I
and I'm
actually
gonna
like
give the
these.
panelists.
They're pretty cool. And I mean, this speaks a lot to
That's
ethics. Yeah. 100%.
Long before King ever came on the scene, we already did that.
Yes,
Please
we
pass it
will
to
tell
him.
him.
Tell Mervyn that.
as
yeah.
he was- as
I've
he was-
told him that myself.
Sure.
As you was actually reading through it, I thought to myself, this actually reminds me of the iCraft.
Yes.
The
In terms
acronym,
of ethics,
because
the
it
components.
speaks to this. Integrity, competence, responsibility, accountability, fairness,
and transparency.
It's exactly what.
But that's
this
what
is.
Tati Shakongo can understand. Just those 4 simple rules of the four-way test.
Or finally Finter
or
as well.
Oma Witboy in Aruap.
Oh,
They
Christy
understand
Marie
that.
Finter
Exactly.
in Aranos.
Exactly.
Also.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then I think probably the one that's in reality killing Namibian businesses is just reliability.
Right.
If someone pays you to do something, do it when you said you're going to do it, how you said you're going to do it, the quality you said you're going to do it. A lot of Namibian businesses take on jobs that they can't handle under the pretense that they can't, and eventually it catches up to them and they run out of business. So reliability is probably one of the most important things.
And that speaks to ethics and legitimacy again, because then you don't keep your word. Yeah.
Kweli van Koller from the founder of Cosmos 94 always says, say what you do and do what you say.
Yeah, 100%.
And that became one of the most successful radio stations in the country. Started in a Wendy house outside Woolworths in Wernhill Centre, 25 years ago.
Yeah. And for history lessons, please contact me. And I'm loving this. Walk down memory lane. What else would you recommend? Maybe as we are starting to wrap up, I think. Advice that you would give small businesses, Feni, in terms of what makes them fail. I mean, we said other things that are not governance, although as we're speaking, I'm like, some of those things are governance components. But yeah, so what else would you say?
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's basically that iCraft acronym that I just referred to now.
Just tell us again.
iCraft. Okay. So iCraft, basically I, which stands for integrity, C for competent, like that's where the reliability. Be competent and stick to what you're doing and do it well. And then the R is for responsibility. Be responsible in terms of complying with things. Be responsible in terms of your attitude, your ethical integrity, and so forth. The A stands for accountability. Be accountable not only to yourself, but also the people around you, your environment, your community, so that you can create value. F is for fairness, be fair to your employees, etc. And then transparency. Transparency, just be an open book. And not only when it suits you, but also when it suits the community and society.
Yeah.
Pay your employees before you pay yourself.
100%. Yes.
I think that's
Pay
what
your
you were referring to.
Yeah.
Behavior of some of the entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything you would like to add in terms of what causes entrepreneurs to fail? What are some of the things they should be looking out for?
I'd say watch out for the tax man, especially if you're a trader.
How are we watching? Are we evading, avoiding, or
No,
as in
no,
we should
no,
do
no,
what
no,
we
no.
need to do?
You should watch how they are watching you. You see, particularly because very practically, a lot of Namibian entrepreneurs are traders, and VAT can run away from you very, very quickly. Because 15% of whatever money you make belongs to the taxman if you're a VAT registered vendor, which I believe most people are, because you can't get government business if you aren't. And that's something that we see. You can run into a deep, deep VAT hole, and by the time the taxman slaps you with the bill, it's a couple million, and you have no clue where to turn or how to get out of it. Stay on top of your finances. The business's money is not your money. That is probably, I mean, I tell my friends this, I tell entrepreneurs this, I tell everyone who asks me this, that is probably one of the most basic and core principles. And then just understand sacrifice. Last night I watched The Pursuit of Happiness, and that was a really good movie. Perseverance.
It's your first time to watch it?
No, I watch it often. But anyway, it was a good movie, and it teaches sacrifice, perseverance, keep going, don't give up. And yeah, eventually you'll get there. Don't get caught down and bogged down in the paperwork and so forth.
Yeah.
The reason you're a business person is because you saw an opportunity, you see there's value, and as long as your principles as a person and as an operator are, call it, as what has been discussed on this panel, I think you will succeed.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. We have almost come to the end. Again, we really want to thank 91. Really, thank you so much. And all our members who tune in and who are members of ours who enable us to be able to do these things. Are there any last comments or thoughts from the panel? 1 minute. We all right?
Yeah.
Going once,
I
going.
just want to say, that's why
Sure.
I wondered why you were not at Evelyn Street last night. You were watching a movie.
That's why he didn't watch?
He wasn't at Evelyn Street in his usual place last night. I wondered what was wrong, but now I understand. You were watching a movie in pursuit of
then.
happiness.
And whether they would. Yeah,
No,
Will
that's
Smith
only
and his
a
son.
joke.
Yes, it is. But again, thank you so much, everyone, for your contribution. Thank you for being here. And I hope that we really walking away with the understanding of what governance really is. It's not the paperwork. It's not the checklist. It's doing the work so that you really have good performance. And good performance looks different for different organizations. For corporates, it might be profit. For you who has a soup kitchen, it looks like, feeding the kids in that neighborhood. So that's what performance look like. And what do you do to achieve that? What does ethical culture look like? It looks like being honest, doing what you said you do, having integrity, controls, making sure that the person who's baking the cake is also the one who's buying the flour or whatever, or making sure that the person who's at the cashier is also not the one who's banking, so that those are controls. Those are basic things. You don't need a risk register for that. Legitimacy. Say what you will do and do what you will say. Keep your promises. Be honest in what you do. So that is governance. And I hope we walk away with that. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And we hope you tune in the Thursday after the next one, where we will talk about PEGA and the amendment that's happening and what does that look like for public enterprises. So yeah, and that's a wrap from us, I think. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Edna.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Thank
for having us.
Thank you to my co-panelists.